Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Story Deep Dive. This is a podcast where two book coaches, editors, and besties discuss books not as readers but as writers to draw inspiration from great books and have plenty of laughs along the way. Today, we are talking about the plot of Twisted Love by Ana Huang. Before we dive into the plot, though, I gotta check in with Dana. Dana's always got something juicy going on over there. So, Dana, tell me what is new over at Danja Tales before we dive into all the meaty goodness of Twisted Love. I don't like that as when I talk about a romance novel. Meaty goodness makes me feel bad. That gives me bad feelings. I meant like in terms of like plot content, but now I feel gross and I'm sad.
This is not the way to start this.
Nope. For the audience, I'm so sorry. I'd like to apologize to my friends and my family and everyone involved in the production of this podcast.
And all the people in the back. Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. First of all, I'm over here trying to make sure that I smile because you've been showing clips on social media and my face is so serious. I feel like I have the resting bitch face. Part of my French.
You're just so focused. Also, like I had the clips that the one of the things that Riverside does is it it changes the like focus of the clip. So even when I'm talking, they're like, look at how Dana's reacting, and you're reacting sensibly by nodding along and like writing stuff down.
The point of the fact that it follows the speaker is the fact that the person who is not speaking should not be on camera. Okay, so we
do speaker view for a reason, but when Riverside does clips, they're like, what if we just showed what the other person was doing just because? What if we just saw what they had going on over there behind the scenes?
Listen, what if I was up here yawning because we've been going all day? It looks like I'm bored. I promise I am not. Okay. Y'all, first of all, this seems like the intro goes way fast and then all of a sudden tag you're it. And so I think right now, more than anything going on in Danja Tales is I'm trying to get my whole entire life together. And I believe this happens every single week. So I don't know what this is for adulting or running a business. But I've been having like this whirlwind, and this is always a time of year where I'm really thinking about like how things went for the year. What did I like? What didn't I like? What do I want to do again? What do we want to do next year? And I just feel like it always feels bumpy when you have like really great options, but at the same time, it's just like, oh my gosh, like how is all this gonna land? So honestly, I feel like I'm just keeping my head above waters, counting down to the fact that this is almost the end of the year. And first of all, the fact that it went so fast is absolutely insane. And I'm just honestly put one foot in front of the other. So this means reviewing everything that we've done this year. We have officially finished the last of our collaborations for the Danja Tales writers as a whole. And we just have our last holiday collaboration for the Inner Circle. Oh my gosh, the Christmas one. When we finish this Christmas one, I think I'm going to pass out in a deep coma-like sleep until next year. Listen, because we've had a million.
You've been working on collaborations for the last 3 months. Been
longer. Longer, because we started in January. It started, the actual releases started in August.
Right.
But they went
before they come out in August.
Exactly. So between getting everything together, covers and everything, since we use one designer and I have to review and approve and review blurbs. And so it was a lot because this year we separated them by genre and by sub-niche. And that was the first time I'd done that in a long time. And listen, I'm supposed to be planning for 2026, but my constitution.
What if we take a break from collaborations in 2026?
Listen.
I don't want to.
Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. This is how, my constitution right now is like, listen, I feel like when the people say F them kids, that's how I feel. So don't ask me how I feel about it today. Ask me later.
Ask you after the collaborations are done. That's probably good. And after you've had a good long sleep.
and a good cup of coffee, a nap, and some quilting. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how I feel right now. And that's probably not the best answer. However, we've had some really great results. We had some of the best pre-orders that we've ever had on collaborations. Like one of the series, I think a lot of people had in the ballpark of nearly 200 pre-orders on books, which was amazing. So we just, I mean, it's getting better and better. And that's the thing about it too. Like keeping it 100 is like, you know, like continuing to do it and have them available makes it so that the future ones benefit from the continuity. But for Coach Dana,
this is a little bit like life of an indie author as well, right? Like you gotta keep, you can't let up. You have to keep going.
Well, we're gonna change that, okay? We're gonna change that. But I think what it can be is the fact of like, yes, keep going, but it's about how you keep going, which is one of the things like I've been teaching a lot this past couple of months, which is our Addictive 7 framework, so that you don't have to find yourself on this hamster wheel. Now, why am I on the hamster wheel is because, you know, I'm managing 6 of them at one time. But for the individual person, making this as a part of your exposure and a part of your marketing process, then that means something else. So I've had that, and I've been in so many daggone summits. Thank you. I appreciate it if you're watching this and listening.
Let me be clear. I am grateful. Also, I'm tired.
I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate it. And honestly, I'm really looking for next year that I really want to be able to start going back in person and doing some things in person again. Yeah. But this is just that time of the year where I think every week I've had anywhere from 1 to 2 either summits where I'm teaching or interviews or something for probably the past about 6 to 8 weeks. So your girl is tired. Okay, it's not even spelled right. Okay, and I promise you, I know what I'm talking about. It's spelled how it feels. Okay. So basically, we're writing. We're keeping it funky and have a good time, and count down to the end of the year. So that's what's going on at Danger Tales today with all of my shenanigans and foolery. Rachel, what about you? What do you have going on at StoryCypher?
Honestly, I'm feeling, I don't think I have quite the level of schedule that you maintain. And I think that you are superhuman in the amount of things that like you have the same, like you specifically, Dana Pittman has the same number of hours in a day as Beyonce has.
Come on, listen.
Rachel is trying to get that many, like is trying to like figure out how Beyonce has that many hours in a day. Rachel can't seem to find those hours in the day, and she is struggling. So, so I'm feeling the same, but I feel like with so much less stuff on my plate than you even have. So in the Academy, we are well into writing our second drafts now, which is so amazing. Because, you know, we're talking about writers in the program who have been trying to write for 5 to 10 years and haven't been able to cross that hurdle of a first draft. And now not only have they crossed the hurdle of a first draft, but they have taken what they learned from writing the first draft. We talked about this last week and created a plan for their second and are now writing to that plan to start layering in those changes and creating something that looks much more like the thing that was in their head. Because the first draft is just sort of your like first gasp of like, here's some stuff. And then you can look at it and then you can start, you know, rearranging it and refining it and all of that good stuff. And now they're in the thick of it. And I likewise am in the thick of it. And so between, you know, writing curriculum, actually writing alongside my students and then recording videos about that writing, by this time in the year, you know, I mean, we're over halfway through the Academy, which is crazy, because we've only got, well, when this recording comes out, we'll only have 1 module left. We'll be, you know, because we're in the middle of the writing and then we've got a revision module. so by this point in the process, I'm starting to wear out. I'm like, furiously trying to write the second draft and recording videos about it and doing all this stuff. And also, I've got the whole year behind it and I'm ready for, ready for a break. So I feel like I'm like right there next to you of like, I see the end. I see the like the holidays in sight. I'm like, we're almost there, but we're not there yet. And so there's like more stuff to do. And I'm like, somebody help me, please.
And you don't want to look too far out because then you don't want to pump yourself up and you got between here and there. So it's just like, you just got to be like really intentional about today is today.
Yes. And you know what? You make a plan for today and different days go differently according to plan, and so they're like, all right, regroup tomorrow, try again, like just keep doing it. So yeah, but this time of year really is like can be pretty intense because this is like a lot of events are happening around this time of year, especially because people are getting stuff in before the holidays. So it's sort of like events are happening prior to the holidays, and then the holidays happen and you're like winding up, like wrapping up the rest of the year to like prepare moving forward, and so those things just kind of like traffic jam at the end of the year, and that's quite it's quite something. And you're also like projecting out in 2026, right? So you're like you're looking backwards, you're looking where you are now, and then you're looking ahead as well, and you're like eyes are like trying to look in 3 different directions. It's an exciting
that's not a
time
pretty
to be alive.
picture.
No, it's really not. You're like, help. So yes, but that's what we got going on. We're planning for 2026, which is so exciting for what happens after everyone graduates the academy, and really really excited for we're talking to the community about what they want to see in 2026 and building that out moving forward. We'll start opening up for a new cohort of the Academy in December, which is super exciting. So it's all very exciting. It's all very good. Right? Same as you. I'm like, I'm just tired. I just want to take a nap.
Listen, I think the fact that you're here, I'm just so excited. I'm excited for where you are in writing and where they are in writing, and I think it gives like a new appreciation for those earlier like steps, like in that earlier process, because when you really think about it, I think, well, one of the things that I've been working on is like, I've been posting more and writing different art, like essays about what's going on, and it makes you stop and think about how much you sort of can forget about those earlier repetitions. And even though like I'm helping people in those earlier repetitions, but it's almost like you kind of really should grab a hold of it because you have so many people that are at that place. So to get them over that, and so that I'm always looking for like getting more wins underneath their belt. Right. Yeah. And getting more of those repetitions in so that they know, like, you've done hard things in life. This is just another hard thing that you already are equipped for. And so you guiding them to that place just makes it exciting. And then for them to not just get on the other side of it, but to have something that they can, it doesn't have to be like the idea in your head, but to have something that is complete and you could be proud of. Yes. And that you've worked hard for and that you completed and you put the end on, man, like that's just, it's everything.
Yeah. And having walked through all of the steps to see and feel the whole process.
Exactly.
Right. Because when you've been stuck on one thing for a long time, and you have that one idea that hasn't fully manifest, so we haven't walked through a full first draft and then a full second draft, like you haven't had the opportunity to go through every step in the process. And so being able to walk through to see what does it feel like, even if we're using a shorter form of fiction, to go through the process, what does it feel like to go through ideation to outlining to first draft to second draft? Like what does it feel like? How do you walk through every single one of those steps so that now you sort of know what to expect for a longer form project? Although we have some people who are doing, I said we'll write novellas, and some people are like, I think I'm going to do a novel. And I'm like, you listen, the rules are the same. Everything's still a plot. Like we're just like expanding it out. if you write a novel in a month, people do it all the time, you go for it. Yes, and I will support you. Like, here we go. And people are doing it, which is amazing. But being able to walk through all the steps in the process so that for your next project, you know what the steps are and how to do them, and you get a little bit better at them, right? That next project, and a little better every time. But it just demystifies the process. You always know what you need to be working on and where you need to be headed. And that's like, especially for a first project, that's like 60% of the battle, is like knowing what you're even supposed to be doing at what point in the process.
Yeah, and I would add to that I always like, especially when you take a look back and you sort of evaluate as you go through each one of those phases, starting to ask yourself, like, what do I need in this phase to feel confident about attacking this phase again or going into the next phase? And I think that's where you really start being able to sort of tap into your secret sauce or your thing that you can bring to the table, because now you realize, like, okay, this is what I got from Coach Rachel. Here's our note. And then last time, this is what tripped me up in execution. And so next time, maybe I decide to do some bullet points, or maybe I decide to work on a timeline, or I decide to do some preliminary notes before I get into the writing of those scenes tomorrow, and those types of things that sort of help you to refine, but you won't know that until you go through that first. Honestly, I tell students 3 to 5 books is really what you need to be able to be like, okay, all right, now I'm on to something, because each one of those earlier ones are going to just be so critical into you kind of deciding like what really works for you, and you begin to deviate from not fully what you were taught, but to where you begin to personalize what you've been taught and what you've learned.
100%. I give my students the same estimate, 3 to 5 books, because it is a lot of trial and error. And that means that you need opportunities to try and error, and then be like, okay, this is how I need to, or like, okay, this, just to your exact point, this is what hung me up last time. Let me try it this way this time and find out if that works better for me. And you're refining your process, but it takes multiple go-arounds to get a full understanding of your process and what works for you and how you walk through the steps in your unique way. So absolutely. And so it also helps, like, people take the pressure off of that first book. It's like, you are still figuring it out. Of course it's hard, because you don't know what works for you yet. So that means you have to try stuff, and it has to be it doesn't have to be, but it will be frustrating sometimes. And you will run into problems, and you will run into, like, again, it is all, you learn these things the hard way, because that's the only way to find out what works individually for you. We teach things to give people a place to start and to help them understand how to move through the process, but only you can find your process, because you have to work with you and yourself to say, okay, what works for me? What do I need? How do I move this forward? And it just takes a few tries to fully do that. And it doesn't mean you can't finish projects until you've mastered that thing. Exactly. And that's why it's important as well to finish those projects and publish them or pitch them or whatever it is that you're looking to do with that project, so that you can put the end on it and then say, okay, on to the next one. I've learned so much from this project, time to do my next one. And so both of those things are really, really important for that whole process.
And as someone who has literally written hundreds of projects, you will always do that. I still am doing it. I mean, the project I'm working on right now, and I'm like, oh, like, I want to test this, or I really want to try my hand at X, Y, and Z. And I think that's the part that keeps exciting you as a writer. Yeah. Because you keep showing up, but every story is requiring something new of you. That's it's a version of what you've done before, but it's never quite the same. And I think that's what makes it exciting, and it keeps you showing up, and it keeps things fresh, even if you're like, oh, I'm back at Act 1 again. But it's a part of the process, and that's what makes it fun. So that's so dope. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into Twisted Love. So before we get into the nitty gritty of what we're talking about today, do you want to hit us with the summary, catch the people up on the story?
Sure. So y'all listen, can I please do a caveat every episode that if I mispronounce Anna's name, y'all please charge it to my head and not my heart. Rachel gonna have it in the bag for us. Y'all know she. No pressure, Rachel. So
if I got it wrong and have gotten it wrong for all 4 episodes, there might be riots, and I'm sorry. I tried to do my research to make sure that I did it properly. I always try to look that up before the podcast so that I can respect every individual person's name. So if I blew it now, I'm sorry.
Listen, Rachel is trying to make sure you do it out of respect, y'all. I'm just saying, if I don't, it's not disrespect. It's just not. Okay, here we go. Okay, Twisted Love, I'm going to just say by Anna, okay, is a steamy, emotionally charged, contemporary dark romance about 2 opposites bound by family, secrets, and obsession. When Ava Chen's protective older brother leaves town, he asks his best friend and cold, calculating neighbor, Alex Volkov, to keep an eye on her. What begins as reluctant guardianship turns into an intense, forbidden attraction that forces both to confront old wounds. Alex hides a past scarred by loss and revenge. Ava carries buried trauma of her own. Their relationship becomes a collision of control and compassion, guilt and desire, light and darkness. It's a story about what happens when love cracks open the armor you've spent a lifetime building. A mix of grumpy sunshine, brother's best friend, and good girl, bad boy tropes, reimagined for a modern audience, blending emotional heat with psychological depth.
Whoa, what a summary. Hot dog. Okay. Well, boy, with all that in mind, Dana, do you want to run me through briefly just the high level topics you want to hit today?
Oh, after all that, we have a list. Okay, so I'm going to speak from my part of the week. I want to talk about, well, first of all, the caveat is that we try our absolute best not to do spoilers. There will be some things that we'll talk about, but it won't be giving away any big twists or anything like that. You really want to read this story. Be forewarned that this is a dark romance, and I'm going to try my absolute best through all of our recordings to say the same thing. But if you came through, this episode, go back to the first one and, do them in order. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, I mentioned it in the summary, but we want to talk a little bit about sort of this collision between their wounds and their world. We see that these two are, they are opposites in not just in their lifestyle, but their family. But there are some things that tie them together that I find that were even stronger than those things that make them different. And so this is a very emotional read. And I think she did a really, really great job in that. We'll talk a little bit, I think, about the tropes, not in heavy hitting because we'll probably talk about them a little bit in every single episode. But I think that this is a really great blend of having a story that's a dark romance, but that hits on some very popular romance tropes that we've seen before. But I think she just gives them just a nice little oomph to them. One of the things that you'll find in this story that I think it does really, really well is using secrets and this illusion of control. You sort of have, Ava, who's sort like is the positive, optimistic sunshine, if you will, of the story. And Alex, who is sort of the dark, morally gray, more edgy, sort of almost stoic like type of personality, very alpha, very much what readers are looking for in a dark romance. But there is a sense where both of these characters have a transformation in this story, and it's this balance between who they are when they show up on the page and who they are that they're trying to protect from their past, that I really look forward to talking about. And then the final thing that I have for the plot, and y'all, low key, I'm going to blur a couple of these things together, is the fact that this is a really great redemption story. You will find a lot of times in dark romance that your main male character or the character that is connected to the underground world or the dark element or the morally gray element has no intentions of not being morally gray, right? They don't want to change. Now there will be some change, but if it's that it's a redemption, and I think that's very different when it comes to dark romance, and I think she did it so well in how she wove these in. And then the final thing that I think we will kind of talk about a little bit together when it comes to plot is that Anna made some very interesting and dead on choices when it comes to writing this story, when it comes to the POV, and also making Alex's character very... Normally we look for, and we talked about this in the pre-show, like that your characters are relatable or sometimes that they're likable. But here is that we would have a sense of understanding for how he handled things, whether you like them or not. And I think the way that she wrote it, it was so that when we saw him going there, we did not like it, but we understood. And that is not an easy thing to do. So this is a great story for if you have a character that is one of those characters where he's going to go there or she's going to go there, but you don't want to lose your reader. Mm-hmm. And so it's a fine line. And I think this story does it well. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's going to sit pretty nicely inside of, there's two main things that I want to highlight when we talk about the plot of this story. And that's going to be number one. I really liked the way that she nested her plot threads, because I think she nested them essentially properly. Like, we knew what our primary promise was, we knew what our secondary plot threads were, and we closed them in the right order. And also that the proof of love felt commensurate with the breakup. So instead of rushing to throw them back together once the problem, the external sort of problem was solved, or the like action story problem, we'll say, was solved, really took the time to let Ava finish her growth arc and Alex finish his growth arc and come back around to make right what was broken at All Is Lost and at the breakup, and not rushing that so that it was like, problems are solved all at once, all together, yay, story's over, right? But actually giving that the time to make that feel meaningful and make it feel like it balanced with, the loss that was suffered at that All Is Lost moment. So I thought that just worked really, really well. Where do you want to start with what we're looking at for plot?
I guess we just start at the top. I think because a couple of these I can put together, and I think we could honestly kind of marry some things that I said along with what you said, which is the foundation of the story. And one is, I think it's easy to talk about the tropes. These are common tropes that we've seen. Brother's best friend, grumpy sunshine. Rachel and I were talking about the fact that another grumpy sunshine that we had was things we never got over. So this is a very interesting sort of take on that same very popular trope. Mm-hmm. But we'll talk about this more in characters. You will see a big difference, though, in how the sunshine aspect of that we see in Twisted Love versus in things we never got over. But it's a great way if you're a person and you're writing in romance, or you want to get a grasp on romance tropes, to be able to see how you can have these same sorts of tropes, but they play out differently. And the reason why they play out differently here is primarily due to kind of like what I started off with sort of this collision between their wounds, right? In that they are sort of forced to be in proximity with each other because of physical proximity, their neighbors, and then the fact that her brother is leaving the country and asks him to look after her because he thinks she's also just way too optimistic and sees the good in people, which we see. And it brings her into proximity with Alex, even though she's known him for years. This is the first time where they're getting to know each other personally versus it just being sort of trapped together, if you will. And so what we have is like, once we have that, then we sort of come into the story, and then that's when we start looking at how she sets up the flow of this story, and almost in the beginning it feels as if it's going to be just another romance. We can see there's an edge to him, right? And we see that romantic promise of like, oh, never, and that there's an attraction there, and that they kind of get under each other's skin in different ways, and that he's sort of a little bit I don't want to say curious, because he does know her, but there starts to be little aspects of her that sort of captures his attention. And in writing this, it causes the progression of the plot and the story and its movement to not leave behind those elements that will later come back and sort of snip at our tushes, right? But it makes it so that we are so enthralled in like what's going on between them and watching. It's almost as if you forget that those little bitty things that sort of like popped up in the beginning, you know, how he just seemed to be a little bit like what he actually did wasn't very clear. His attempts to keep her at a distance, the moments when he would even just go all the way out and we see the full-blown like possession sort of tropes really rear their heads, and she pays it off in spades when we come back around towards the end. And so I feel like this is one of those books where she sets this up in a way that you think you're going to get one thing, and she does set up the promise appropriately, but she does a great job of escalating it to a point of when it comes up on you, you're not surprised, but you're surprised. Y'all, I don't really have words for this, okay? If I was looking at the story, I'd be able to tell you, but it's like you're surprised because it's like, ooh. But she does it in such a good way that it doesn't feel like it's coming out of left field. It feels like it is inevitable, but it's a surprising twist, if you will. And you see that constantly in a way that she escalates it. And in the escalation, this is one of those stories where she does not hold back. She does not hold back the punches. Every one of them goes up, because there are some moments where you're like, there is no way you're going to be able to take this up another notch. And she says, watch me, hold my beer, and then you're just like, okay. And so we get to kind of go on this journey. And as we're going on the journey, we get that push and pull where he's trying to do it in control and she's doing it in her own form of control, that still has a lighter side to it, because she is optimistic, but she is really intentional about still having her agency, which is really important to this plot and how it unfolds. And so it just, honestly, and I think that there are some of the things that we'll talk about a little bit with the POV that lends itself well to that. But it does, whether it's going from them sort of having this very almost light girlfriend banterish of like trying to see how she can make Alex have these different emotions, to her starting to realize that she's more attuned to him than he realizes. And that she, in the beginning, which could be a little bit risky, but I think it was a good risk, and it'll go to something else that you want to talk about, which is she likes the fact that she's able to start reading him. Like, if you think about the scene, I don't want to give it away, but when they're at the party and she's like, you think I'm naive, but I think you wish and I think she lets those moments sort of seep in, so it doesn't feel like this poor little Ava. This big bad Alex. And even when she's soft, she still has a very, like, she still has a spine. She still is vocal about what she wants and doesn't want, even if she folds, you know what I mean? And I think it's an amazing job when you're aiming to keep a character, in this case, not jaded by all of the trauma that she's been through. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to see that trauma has still had an effect on her. Yeah. And so, I merged a couple of them, but I hope it like pulls together. And because of this, you get that push-pull. you get that conflict between them, and it makes for this story that you can't look away from and you can't stop reading.
Yeah, and I think so, like, that kind of pairs nicely when we think about, like, the plots and the setups, right? Because, and these two things will kind of, like, plots and setups kind of will go together, because we get very clear setups for our tropes, right? Like, immediately scene one, we're like, ooh, we see Grumpy Sunshine, right? Like, Alex is like, I'm serious. And Ava's like, I'm gonna get a cake for my brother, yeah! Like, and she's like trying to, like, be friendly, she's trying to be nice, because it's like, we're sharing this space, I'm gonna try to do what I can, and he is just like, ugh, you're so annoying, like, you know? And so immediately, right, we know that we're like, oh, we're in Grumpy Sunshine, and it's immediately right, like, Alex Volkov is my brother's best friend. So we know those things right out the gate. But then when you think about the way that the setup is in the beginning of the story, right, of like, hey, I'm worried about my sister, I need you to look out for her, and you kind of have this sort of like version of like forced proximity almost. It's not like this proximity, but it's like they're stuck in close proximity at any rate. What it does is it makes it clear for us, and the tone of it says, ooh, we're getting a contemporary romance, right? Like, it has that like that classic romance feel. It's a little bit funny, you know, there's a little bit of that comedy of just the contrast between them, and the whole, like, we're gonna get Alex to feel things plan. But she makes it very clear within the second chapter, I think, when we're in Alex's POV at the party, that this is also a dark romance, that there will be dark elements. So we get some allusions to, like, you know, a plan for revenge. And we also, because I think one of the key dark aspects that's happening in the story is like an aspect of kink as well. And she lets us know right away that, like, this is a thing that is going to be in the story. You won't see it till later, but, like, right, he makes very clear how he does things when he is, like, when we're in his POV. And so it helps us to understand what we're in for. And then she delivers on all of those things that, you know, he's sort of like ruminating on this plan and what he's doing and how he's keeping tabs on all these people. And we're going to see that come to bear. He reflects on, you know, this girl is not going to be down for the way that I do things, which is very specific. We know that that's now on the table, and it's going to get paid off later. And so we see, like, she makes it very clear to us without telegraphing exactly what we're going to see, that it's going to go there. And so we know that right away. So when it goes there, we're like, it's paying off something that was already set up. And that includes the sort of like mini, like, action revenge story that's nested inside the story. But that is a secondary promise that gets made in the story. And so this is where I'm you know, talking about nested plots, right? So the primary promise made is this is a romance story. It's primarily contemporary romance. So the most of the time that we spend, like, as in the way that, like, the most of the time we spend is like, no, we're not in the mafia, we're not, like, you know. So most of the time that we spend is Alex and Ava getting to know each other. Again, you've got a lot of that light feel from their interactions with each other, with that underlying chemistry. And that's going to be the final thing that pays off is, you know, are they going to get together? Are they going to be able to make it together? Like, that's where the story ends. The action revenge story is kind of nested inside of that, which means it closes before the contemporary romance aspect does. So a really great resource, like where I got a really good lesson on this, Mary Robinette Kowal did a guest lecture for Brandon Sanderson's 2020 creative writing class, and she talks about this in depth. It's a really great video where she talks about how you nest and close plots. And I think that Twisted Love does this correctly, because if it was like the revenge story was set up as a secondary plot, but it was the last thing that resolves, we would be like, wait, what story am I in? Where, like, and it's like, it throws you off because the promise that was set up is not the primary payoff that you're getting. So you have this smaller plot that's almost getting the climactic moment treatment in a way. And so she closes those in the order that she kind of opens them, and it makes the pacing feel like it works properly together. And that's, it's not always easy to do. And I think once you become aware of like what promises you're setting up and in what order you're setting them up, it helps you to know then what order you need to close them in as well. And I think she did that really nicely here.
Yeah, I have never seen that lecture, but I always like to tell my clients that the way that you really look at it is almost like a rainbow, right? Like if you're listening, you can't see my fingers, but if you go on YouTube, you can, as long as it's not shady and jump to Rachel. But
I better smile just in case it does.
But it's like a rainbow, right? So that it's sort of opening and closing this way. The one thing that I will say as a caveat is sometimes what you'll have in romance is that you'll see that some tropes run a duration that's just for an act. Right. So all the times it's not like a rainbow. It may be like a rainbow for the overarching, and then it may be something that runs the course for act 1, act 2, act 3. And it really depends on the author's style, but it would still sort of adhere to, if romance is your primary plot and that love story is your primary plot, then it's going to be the last thing that sort of takes us into the finality and into the ending and into the happily ever after. And then the other part I will say about that, especially when it comes to dark romance sort of has this like adjacentness when it comes to suspense. Sometimes, you may have thriller aspects. Sometimes it may be, and it may come from the fact that you have organized crime, it's mafia, but it's usually some element that is sort of paired with the romantic plot that sort of lends itself to that external dark nature, so that we can, just like what I was talking about with Alex, you can see where that darkness comes from. Now he has it from his history and his backstory, but also he has it present day in how he operates his business and how he keeps secrets and tallies on everyone. And so those are some of those things that helps us to be able to nail it when it comes to the character and the overarching flow of the story. But it can also lend itself to the things that we're talking about here when you're talking about the span of those subplots. And so I would say more than anything, like having that rainbow makes it easier when it comes to making sure you set up and pay off. But if you find that you are doing sort of like it's running the duration of like an act, and think of it, a great example again was Things We Never Got Over. Like in the beginning it was sort of like enemies to lovers, and even though the whole thing was enemies to lovers, if you will, but then we kind of second act went into fake dating. And then third act, we almost ended having this like fake relationship, right? And it's sort of like hopscotched, if you will. But that was all under the guise of the progression of the romantic relationship. And so, but being able to sort of pinpoint in your chapters, or if you look at the spectrum of your chapters in your story of where they sort of open and close, it's just a great way to make sure you don't have plot holes and that it becomes an enjoyable reading experience.
Yeah, and I think that's a really nice kind of way to like kind of shift into sort of this idea of like secrets and the illusion of control and how that's functioning like in the plot and at the plot level of the story and what's happening, and how that's really it's adding conflict to their, like, it adds conflict on both levels of them internally, right? Because they're trying to protect things and they're trying to, exercise control in their own ways. But then that also manifests, as it always does, I think, if every example I can think of, in romance, where, right, that effort, that internal effort is causing problems in the external story, and it's causing problems for achieving connection with each other, because you're trying to protect all this stuff, which means you're not able to make meaningful connection, and they're in that healing process. So you want to talk a little bit more about how those sort of play out in the plots and how they kind of give us that sense of conflict in their process of getting together?
Yeah, I don't know if I was going to exactly talk about it like that. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We're going to find out. What I was looking at more than anything is the fact that Secrets and the Illusion of Control here, it was like a leveler, right? You can see that Ava, you could say that Ava is, she's optimistic, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to do the thing that she wants, even if her father doesn't fully support it. She's willing to stand up to her brother that thinks she needs a babysitter, and she knows how to pick her battles, right? And you have Alex, who seems totally in control, both in his business and his potential to earn, and the business that he oversees with his uncle, all these different things. But for both of them, those secrets and that illusion of control becomes a leveler, because it basically wipes both of them out, right? It wipes her out because there are secrets that she knows but doesn't know because of her situation. And then there are things that he believes he knows but doesn't know. And I think what it does is give them fertile ground in the sense to come closer together, even though it can also become the thing that tears them apart. And I think it's interesting here, because if you were to have it that the external thing was the thing that did the leveling, right, that was in control of it, it would feel more as if it was a suspense story than a romance. Yeah. And so what's happening here is that internal wrestling and that sort of gutting, if you will, or exposure, right, is what exposes those raw innards that's underneath that shield that they've built. Yeah. And so there was one scene that I thought was so good when she sort of pulled away. And he's like, wait, where? Like, it was him, like, where is she? Like, no, we're in this together. Like, and that's one of those moments where it's almost like her sort of not just taking on her agency, but I think it was more so of like, you have some skin in the game too. Alex has some skin in the game too. And all the while they're sort of having this push-pull, the more that those secrets come out, the more that we understand who they are and how those secrets and those moments defined who they were, and how their growing relationship sort of circumvented those things. This is where I just think she just did a thing in this story, that it makes it so that those things that they feel like they have such control over are just exposed. And it reminds me of, like, I always like to talk about how I don't like when people talk about romance in a sense of like, okay, it's all happily ever after, and you complete me, Jerry Maguire kind of thing. And I don't think that it's meant to be like a you complete me kind of thing for the ones that really gut you just right. I think what it is that they want to become that version of themselves to have the love of the other person. Yeah. Right? And so those moments when that control and those secrets begin to unfold are when we see the person in them that they are willing to fight for it, or the version of them that they're trying to protect. And the softness of one, the courage and strength of the other begins to sort of overlap and help. And it helps her to become stronger, and it helps him to become softer, if you will, even if it's just for her, so that he can get to his place of transformation, which was really a redemption. And for her to get to her place of transformation, which was to become like courageous externally and courageous internally, and to be able to still be her bubbly self.
Yeah, to find both of those actually able to come together, to face the worst, and face it full on, and still be able to be that person, almost like in a more authentic way, or in an even stronger way, in a more robust way, that one doesn't overtake the other, but they actually come together.
And that they choose it. And that's the best part of romance, right? That they choose it. Because in the beginning, it could be lust. It could be, we just having a good old time, scraping furniture across the room. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, but this is where like I always say, romance is the genre that I believe we get full access to the full spectrum of the human emotion. And this is one of those stories where you see it, like you really see it. So when you have her quest for independence and wholeness, and to have courage against those things that causes her to have nightmares and that causes her to have dark spots in her memory, against him who remembers everything, who is haunted by his very memories, and who is clinging to revenge as if it will be a healing factor.
Yeah.
So for both of those things to have a both and moment, that they both can coexist, and that love is possible, and that they desire it, and that they want it. And the last part that I will say about this is I think it's very, it's necessary to think about the romantic progression and the evolution of that love story aspect of it before you start getting into something that is as nitty gritty as this story. There really had to be some deep feelings for it to be able to withstand the climactic moment. So you have to make great choices. I think this is definitely one of those stories that are probably written, rewritten, and written, and or you are really plotting it out so that you can understand, so you can have the creative freedom to go there, and your reader goes with you.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this really shine.
Yeah, which really, that kind of crosses over really nicely into sort of the proof of love moment, as well as the redemptive arc at work here. So I think this is probably a good place to just kind of like fold into that redemptive arc. Do you want to talk a little bit about Alex's redemptive arc and how that sort of deviates from what you sort of would normally see in dark romance? You already hinted at it before, but you just want to dive into that, and then we'll talk proof of love?
Yeah. A lot of times what you're going to find that makes dark romance a little bit of a difference, and I would have before even said an exception, but now it's its own subgenre, is that most of the time what we used to call this would be the anti-hero sort of story, if you were talking about in other genres. But in romance, it's sort of it would still kind of considered an anti-hero, but they don't have any intentions of leaving the mafia or no longer being morally gray or even keeping tabs on people. He was keeping tabs to the very end. Okay. but they have in fact changed. And what I like here is that the climax of this story did such a great job of gutting them both. This is a little aside. I promise not to do a whole squirrel moment. I'm going to bring it back. I promise. But I was having a conversation with a student, and there was this big thing where people like to say they don't like breakup scenes. Like, does this story have a breakup scene? And I really dislike romances that do not have breakup scenes. I tell my students all the time, a love not tested cannot be trusted. And here, this love is tested.
Yeah.
You do not question that. And there were some very pivotal choices that were made by Anna that make it even better. It will rip out your heart. She tap dances on it. She throws salt on it. I think she even did a backhand bounce on that thing before she gave you back your heart. And I think that is good in the best possible way. And this is what dark romance readers want. They want to feel all of the things. Yeah. And so here, the fact that he has this redemption, and it was because Ava said, no, bruh, you are not about to tap dance and backhand bounce on my heart.
Yeah. And then just come right back on in and
exactly.
Me be like, sure, come on.
Oh, you're sorry. Okay. And I think that's what helps us in this story to truly believe the transformation and change that they had. And even though he has no intentions of no longer being Alex that we know at the beginning of the story, he is a different version of himself because of love, and to have Ava's love specifically. And so I think that is what makes this so great. And it made the restoration of their relationship at the end feel so well earned. And you saw it, and that they both in their own way was fighting for it, even when they were fighting against each other. And again, it's still, it allowed the ending, as they're aiming to sort of have that reconciliation, to still have conflict and to still have tension, while we had those chapters that are usually not as long. We don't normally have that many chapters in that fourth act of the structure, but here we do. And I think it was a very wise decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really, like, it wasn't just sort of like dragging out the story right. It wasn't just we're just gonna, I don't know, amble our way to the end. But it really was, the breakup moment, because the breakup happens and Alex has to make some choices, but there are still some secrets that come out that undermine everything that Ava understood about Alex, and they don't just affect Ava, right? Like, it's much deeper than that. So it isn't just like, Alex is lying and he's going to do, there's something more that's been going on the whole time, and so when you have something like that, to make it easy for Alex to get back with Ava, or for Ava to get back with Alex, it would undermine the impact of the moment we had before. And so instead, taking that extra time, because the thing is I think, and this is a part of something you were talking about earlier, of like, Ava has to choose who she's going to be when the worst happens again. Like, because the thing is she didn't know what happened to her. Then she finds out the truth she knew sort of roughly, but doesn't really, doesn't know. She can't remember it. And then she finds out what really happened. But that was in the past. Now in real time, something, right, like there's been another betrayal of trust. There's been another moment of wounding. And she has to kind of go through the grieving process and decide what she's going to do. If she's going to let it swallow her whole, or if she's going to say, this is who I am and who I'm choosing to be, in spite of what happened. Like, I am going to choose into this person. I am going to go live my dream anyway. And it gives her so by extending that out, it gives her the chance to own her decisions, to go through the pain of that sort of like dark night moment, and to also emerge and live it out without Alex, so that when he comes back around, she is able to, and again, he has to work for it. He doesn't just come back and she's like, okay. He has to, so we see him working to make right what he made wrong at All Is Lost. And so she gets the chance to grow. He gets the chance to grow and prove that prove his growth, prove his dedication. And then they come back together. And it feels right now for them to come back together, because now they've both been through their whole process, and it has enabled them to come together at a deeper level of intimacy, at a deeper level of trust, because of that extra time that was spent. And so it makes that moment of coming together more meaningful, because they both earned their moment together, and we didn't just patch it up really fast after we just tried to rip your heart out, like, rip our reader and Ava's heart out and stomp on it, and actually giving that the full space to make it feel like that gesture and the growth on both sides actually mattered and enabled them to come together, which is kind of what you want to see.
Yes, and what you're describing here is that in the fourth act of a romance, the reason why the breakup is so instrumental and pivotal is because it gives them time to get their ish together. That it isn't about the relationship.
Yeah.
It is about them being whole and complete on their own. And so that when they have that space and time, and this is why you need that moment, because the reason why it feels as if it was earned, because it was. First, he had to get his ish, she had to get her ish, and then they come back in a sense of truth. All the things that were hidden, circumvented, half-truths, or whatever, have all been laid on the table, and they get to decide, do I still choose you? Mm-hmm. And that is the best kind of juicy love story, right? Yeah. And so what you're saying is absolutely true that we see here. And it's also a great example of seeing what moments are or are not on the page. and that we get to see that. And so when you get to the grand gesture, the thing that I love about this grand gesture is that the grand gesture isn't that grand. By the like, it is a huge deal if it were in isolation, and if the all is lost wasn't just like, dude, right? So it made it so that the climax and the reconciliation took up more sort of mental space than the actual grand gesture, right? So that it did feel as if it was earned. And sometimes I think when you hear earned, it's as if you can earn love itself, and that's not it. But what you want to see is you want to see that wrestling and that give and take that's required to make that love story feel believable, that we feel like, yes, they will, if you will, walk off into the sunset, all that good stuff. And that's what we're looking for. And she just, delivered this in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, we're just right about at the top of the hour, but before we wrap up, did you want to make a note at least about choosing the POV for, that was the last thing I think on our list that we didn't quite hit, about picking the POV for those major moments that we have?
Well, I mentioned it and sprinkled it in as I was talking, but I will say here, I believe that her selection of POV was done beautifully. I think it was done beautifully, not because anything is ever perfect, but I think it's because here you needed to clearly understand Alex's pain, his way of thinking, and also essentially his coping mechanisms, right? That he's carried over into adulthood. And we saw that in pivotal scenes, and just like, I'm not gonna give you spoilers, but in the climactic scene, having it from his point of view was golden, because as he is gutting her, he is gutting himself. And granted, you could still bop him in the head and be like, dude, but at the same time, it's like everybody's hurting. And it just makes you think of that saying, hurt people. And that's what it was happening. But at the same time, there was more to it. And so deciding whose point of view that you use is, I think it is a craft in and of itself. I like to look for the person who knows the least amount of information, or that can be disrupted the most. But in this case, in reality, it's the opposite, right? It is the opposite. And so that has got to be an intentional choice. I think it also does really great for this sort of story where it is a romance, but this is an alpha, dark, or morally gray male character that you are stoic, you have no emotions, because this was the game that we was trying to get him to play. You don't have emotions, and no, he feels all of the daggone emotions. And so us understanding that and having a level of understanding about him, we don't give him a pass, but we low-key kind of get it. And it's like, you don't want to, but it's like, but you can, because it's like, that's the thing about these stories when it comes from a place where it was sort of the seed of it and the root of it is from childhood, that I think dark romance explores so well. And sometimes it can go off, but it just is what it is. But it's the fact that these type of traumatic things can really change people. And he needed somebody like an Ava that is just like, but you can choose to go on, and him seeing her fight the things that sort of held her back, and her being willing to just accept him as is and sort of take his, his grumpiness and even still poke at the bear, he needed that. He needed that sunshine. He needed that light, even if he didn't think he deserved it. And so with that said, I would say picking those scenes, and whenever you're in those moments, you may find that you need to look at and or write that scene multiple times to see which one does the most justice for where you are in the story.
Yep.
And I think it pays evidence to the groundwork, back to when we were talking about whether it's the rainbow, whether you're hopscotching those plots, that plays the most, really plays up on how you've set up the rest of the story. And if you've done those plotting choices well and those point of view choices well, when you get to a scene like this, we are wrecked in the best possible way. because you have set up. And now the best thing about the story, and I'll say this, I think is my last point, everything that she said and set up about him, he did.
Yeah.
Every single thing, whether we liked it or not. Listen, Alex told no lies. He told half truths. He told half truths. But he told no lies. So that's the other part of this that made it all just hit. And it was almost like everything. And here, I wish I had a diagram. But really what happens a lot of times in romance, so that last leg of the romance is in fact the romance, is everything that you've done up through the story comes to this head. It blows up. It sort of has an end of those secondary plots. And then from that moment on, it's about whether that couple can stand, whether they actually get there happily ever after, whether the mileage that they got from that relationship up until that explosion was enough to give them the future that both of them want. Because the very thing that they were afraid of happened again. But they are not the same people. And so that is what is also a great aspect of this story. It's like we get all of those secondary plots, all of those good things, all the things that made us laugh, all the things that made it feel a little bit rom-com-y, all the way up into the point where everything sort of hits the fan. And then we close out on that revenge plot. And the father, like all of that. And then we push forward to the end. And now it's just about them.
Yeah.
And how they're going to handle that. And I think she just did well. And it wasn't just about the grand gesture. It was about like how they're going to live life and do life together and whether they can make it work. And it wasn't wrapped up with a cute bow. Yeah. It wasn't. And that was great too. But it felt authentic to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, everyone, that does it for the plot of Twisted Love. Thank you all so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you know when new episodes come out. Drop us a like. Feel free to leave comments about, did you like the story? If you have questions that we can answer in future episodes. And you can also check us out at storydeepdive.com. I'm pretty sure I hit all of the things that they can or should do. Leave us a rating and review as well. That helps the podcast and helps us know how we're doing. So, other than that, I think that's everything. So we will be back next week to talk more in depth about characters, and we have plenty to talk about, so look forward to that. So we will see you all really soon, and until then, happy writing.